Welcome to Moonmine Temple, where your restless mind finally finds the peace it has been searching for. Tonight, let yourself sink into the gentle embrace of ancient wisdom that will carry you beyond stress, beyond reaction, into the deepest tranquility you've ever known. Close your eyes, release the weight of your day, and allow these timeless teachings to wash over you like a healing river of calm. Feel your breathing slow and deepen as the noise of the modern world begins to fade away. With each gentle breath, you're drifting backward through time, leaving behind the rush and urgency of daily life. The familiar sounds of traffic and technology dissolve into silence, replaced by something far more ancient and peaceful. Let yourself be carried on this current of tranquility to a place where wisdom has been preserved for countless generations. You find yourself walking along a narrow mountain path in ancient Korea, your feet crunching softly on fallen autumn leaves. The air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and the distant smoke of temple incense. Before you rises a small monastery, its curved rooftops emerging from morning mist like a vision from another world. You can hear the gentle sound of a bamboo water feature somewhere in the distance. Tick, 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 marking the passage of time in perfect rhythm with your heartbeat. As you approach the monastery gates, you notice the carefully tended gardens that surround the buildings. Moss-covered stones sit in perfect harmony with raked gravel patterns, and a small stream winds its way between ancient trees. The morning sun filters through the canopy above, creating dancing patches of light that move across the path, like gentle spirits, welcoming you home. You can almost feel the centuries of peace that have settled into this place, each stone and tree holding the wisdom of countless monks who have walked these same paths. Suddenly, the tranquil atmosphere is shattered by angry shouting from within the courtyard. You hurry through the wooden gates and see a scene that stops you in your tracks. A wealthy merchant stands in the center of the peaceful space, his silk robes disheveled, his face red with fury. His voice echoes off the monastery walls like thunder disturbing a serene lake, and you can feel the tension radiating from his clenched fists and rigid posture. "Master Wonyo," the merchant bellows, his words cutting through the morning air like sharp blades. "I know you have influence with the local magistrate. You must help me recover my goods, or I'll make sure everyone knows how useless this place truly is." You learn from his desperate words that bandits have stolen his entire caravan just 2 valleys away, and his whole world has collapsed in a single night. The other monks scatter like startled birds, their peaceful morning meditation shattered by this emotional storm. But your attention is drawn to a figure near the entrance who seems completely untouched by the chaos. Master Wonyo kneels beside a small rock garden, his weathered hands guiding a wooden rake through carefully arranged gravel. Each stroke creates perfect lines in the sand, and you can see how his movements mirror his breathing, deep, steady, completely unaffected by the fury swirling around him. The contrast is so striking that you find yourself holding your own breath, watching this living demonstration of inner peace. You move closer, drawn by the master's extraordinary calm. The morning sun casts dancing shadows across the arranged stones, and in this moment, you feel time itself slowing to match Wonyo's unhurried pace. The rake makes soft scraping sounds against the small stones, creating patterns that seem to mirror the flow of water or the movement of clouds across an endless sky. Each line in the sand appears deliberate yet effortless, like watching a master calligrapher create poetry with simple strokes. The merchant's voice grows even louder, more desperate. "Did you hear me, old man? I'm ruined. My family will starve. Everything I've worked for is gone." His words are designed to provoke, to force someone to share in his pain and urgency. You watch the master's face, expecting some flicker of reaction, some sign that this emotional assault is penetrating his serenity. But Wonhyo's expression remains as peaceful as a mountain lake at dawn, undisturbed by the storm raging around its shores. Then, something shocking happens. The merchant steps directly into the rock garden, his expensive boots crushing the carefully raked patterns. You wince as you see hours of meticulous work destroyed in seconds. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you," he demands, grabbing the rake from Wonhyo's hands and throwing it aside. The wooden tool clatters against the stone pathway, and for a moment, the only sounds are the distant call of a mountain bird and the whisper of wind through bamboo leaves. You watch in amazement as Master Wonhyo simply smiles, not mockingly or condescendingly, but with the gentle expression of someone watching a child learn an important lesson. Without a word, he kneels down and begins smoothing the disturbed sand with his bare hands. His movements are so graceful, so utterly peaceful, that you see the merchant step back involuntarily, as if touching something sacred. There's something almost magical happening here, and you can feel it in the air around you like the approach of a gentle rain. You see, Wonhyo speaks for the first time, his voice as calm as still water. When we react to life's storms with more storm, we only create greater chaos. Your anger, though understandable, cannot bring back your goods. Your demands, though passionate, cannot change what has already occurred. But your peace of mind, that is something no bandit can steal, no loss can diminish, no external circumstance can touch, unless you give it away through reaction. You watch the merchant's entire demeanor begin to shift. Something in Wonhyo's presence is working its magic, a transmission that happens not through words but through pure being. The merchant's shoulders start to relax, and when he speaks again, his voice is quieter, more vulnerable. "But Master, how can I not react? Everything I am is tied to what I've lost. My identity, my family's security, my future, it's all gone." You find yourself leaning forward, drawn into this moment of transformation. Wonhyo nods with deep understanding, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of someone who has walked through his own fires of loss and emerged, transformed. "Let me share something with you," he says, settling into a comfortable sitting position on the garden's edge. You position yourself where you can hear every word, sensing that something profound is about to unfold. Many years ago, I too faced a loss that seemed to destroy everything I thought I was. I had spent decades building a reputation as a great scholar, writing commentaries that were revered throughout the land. Then one day, a fire consumed my entire library, thousands of manuscripts, years of work, my life's achievement, all reduced to ash in a single night. The merchant sits down without realizing it, and you notice how the very quality of attention in the courtyard has shifted. Even the birds seem to be listening more quietly. Around you, the morning continues its gentle progression, leaves rustling their timeless whispers, the sun painting everything in golden light that seems to bless this moment of sharing. "What did you do?" the merchant asks, his anger now completely replaced by genuine curiosity. "I sat in the ashes and wept," Wonhyo replies with complete honesty. "For 3 days, I raged against fate, against the careless servant who had knocked over the lamp, against the wind that had fanned the flames. I was consumed by reaction, bitter, angry, devastated. But on the 4th morning, as I sat among the charred remains of my life's work, I noticed something extraordinary." You can almost see the scene he's describing, the devastated scholar sitting in ruins, surrounded by the ashes of his life's work. A small green shoot had pushed up through the ash, reaching toward the light with such pure determination that it took my breath away. In that moment, I understood something profound. The fire had not destroyed my true work. It had only consumed the forms that work had taken. The master pauses, and you feel the weight of this revelation settling in your own heart. The wisdom, the understanding, the genuine insights, these lived not in the manuscripts but in my being. By choosing to react with devastation, I was throwing away the very thing that made those writings valuable in the first place. The plant growing through the ashes taught me that our deepest treasures are not in what we can lose, but in what we can never lose, our capacity for peace, for wisdom, for choosing our response to whatever life brings. You watch as the merchant's eyes fill with tears, not of anger now, but of recognition. "So you just accepted the loss?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "I chose to respond rather than react," Wonhyo clarifies gently. "Reaction comes from the wounded part of us that believes we are only what we possess, what we've achieved, what others think of us. Response comes from the deeper part that knows who we truly are, the part that cannot be touched by any external circumstance. When I stopped reacting to the fire as a disaster and began responding to it as a teacher, everything changed." The merchant wipes his eyes with the back of his hand. "But practically speaking, Master, I still need to provide for my family. I still need to rebuild my business. How does not reacting help with those real problems?" You see Wonhyo's face light up with understanding. "This is the beautiful paradox," he says, beginning to trace new patterns in the sand. When we stop wasting our energy on reaction, on anger, blame, despair, we have so much more energy available for effective action. After I released my rage about the fire, I was able to see clearly what needed to be done. I rewrote my most important works from memory, but this time they were even better because they came from lived wisdom rather than just intellectual understanding. You watch the master's hands as he creates spiral patterns in the sand, each curve seeming to represent the endless cycles of loss and renewal that define human existence. "That night, I went to bed with nothing," he continues, "but I woke up with everything, because I had remembered who I really was. The manuscripts were just the wrapping paper. The real gift was always inside me, waiting to be unwrapped by whatever circumstances life provided. The merchant stands up slowly, and you can see that something fundamental has shifted in his bearing. His shoulders are no longer hunched with anger, but straightened with a quiet dignity. "I think I understand," he says, looking down at the patterns Wonyo has created. "My goods are gone, but my ability to create value, to serve others, to build something meaningful, that's still here. The bandits couldn't steal that." Wonyo nods with deep satisfaction, like a gardener watching a seed finally sprout. Now you're beginning to taste the freedom that comes from not reacting. When we stop identifying ourselves with what can be taken away, we discover what can never be taken away. And from that place of unshakable peace, we can respond to any situation with wisdom and effectiveness. You watch as the merchant bows deeply to the master, his anger completely transformed into gratitude. "Thank you for showing me the difference between reacting and responding," he says. "I came here demanding that you fix my external situation, but you've done something far more valuable. You've helped me remember who I am beyond my circumstances." As the merchant prepares to leave, Wonhyo hands him the wooden rake. "Take this as a reminder," he says with a gentle smile. "Whenever you feel the urge to react, remember the garden. Sometimes it gets disturbed, but it can always be made beautiful again with patience and presence. The same is true for your inner landscape." You sit quietly as the merchant walks away, his step lighter than when he arrived despite having lost everything. The courtyard returns to its natural rhythm, birds resuming their songs, the bamboo fountain continuing its eternal tick, 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 the morning sun climbing higher in the sky. But something has fundamentally changed in the quality of peace here. You've witnessed a miracle, not the magical kind, but the kind that happens when a human being chooses wisdom over reaction, response over reflex. Wonhyo begins recreating the garden patterns, and you're struck by how he seems to enjoy starting fresh. There's no attachment to the previous design, no resentment about having to begin again. Each stroke of the rake is made with complete presence, as if this moment, this line in the sand, is the most important thing in the universe. Watching him, you begin to understand that this is what mastery looks like: complete acceptance of what is, combined with joyful engagement with what's emerging. "You seem puzzled," Wonhyo says suddenly, looking up at you with eyes that seem to see right through to your soul. You realize you must have been staring, lost in contemplation. "I was wondering," you find yourself saying, "how you developed such incredible self-control. How do you not react, even when someone is destroying something you've worked so hard to create?" The master chuckles softly, a sound like water flowing over smooth stones. "It's not about self-control," he says, setting down the rake and giving you his full attention. Self-control implies using force to suppress reaction. What I practice is more like self-understanding. When you truly understand the nature of reaction, you naturally lose interest in it, like a child who outgrows a toy. You lean forward, eager to understand this deeper teaching. Around you, The monastery continues its peaceful existence. Monks quietly going about their morning tasks. The garden returning to perfection under Wonhyo's patient care. Let me tell you about the nature of reaction, he continues, his voice taking on the quality of someone sharing a precious secret. Every reaction is actually a reenactment of an old wound. This statement hits you like a gentle lightning bolt. What do you mean? You ask, sensing that you're about to learn something that could change your entire approach to life. Watch carefully. The next time you react strongly to something, Wonhyo suggests, beginning to trace a new pattern in the sand, this time a simple circle that seems to represent wholeness. Notice that your reaction is usually much stronger than the situation warrants. That's because you're not just responding to what's happening now, you're responding to every time something similar happened in your past. The present moment becomes a screen onto which we project all our old pain. You think about times when you've overreacted to relatively small things. A criticism at work that sent you into a spiral, a friend's casual comment that ruined your entire day. Suddenly, Wonhyo's words begin to make sense. So when I react, I'm not really responding to what's actually happening. Exactly, the master nods with satisfaction. Reaction is always about the past. Response is always about the present. When that merchant was shouting at me, he wasn't really angry about his lost goods. He was reliving every time he had felt powerless, every time life had seemed unfair, every time his security had been threatened. His reaction had very little to do with me or this moment and everything to do with his accumulated history of feeling unsafe in the world. The profound simplicity of this insight settles into your awareness like a key finding its lock. But if reactions are just old wounds playing out, you ask, how do we stop them? Wonhyo's eyes twinkle with gentle mischief. We don't stop them. We see them clearly. Once you truly see that your reaction is not about the present moment, it loses its grip on you. It's like waking up from a dream. The moment you realize you're dreaming, the dream can no longer control you. He stands up and walks to a small stone basin filled with clear water, gesturing for you to follow. You can see your reflection in the still surface, and Wonhyo drops a small pebble into the center. Ripples spread outward in perfect concentric circles, distorting your image. This is what happens when we react, he explains. The pebble is the external event, and the ripples are our emotional disturbance. Most people think the ripples are the problem and try to stop them with more action, creating more ripples. You watch as the water gradually returns to stillness, your reflection becoming clear again. But if we simply observe without interfering, the natural state of clarity returns by itself. Wonhyo continues. This is the secret of not reacting. We don't fight the ripples. We remember that we are the entire lake, not just the surface disturbance. The beauty of this metaphor moves through you like a gentle current. You realize that you've been identifying with the ripples your whole life, thinking that temporary emotional disturbances were the totality of who you are. So the practice is to remember our deeper nature, you ask. The practice is to rest in our deeper nature, Wonhyo corrects gently. There's a difference between remembering something with your mind and resting in it with your being. Let me show you what I mean. He leads you to a small meditation pavilion overlooking the valley below. From this vantage point, you can see the winding path where travelers and merchants make their way between villages. The morning mist is beginning to lift, revealing terraced fields and distant mountains painted in shades of blue and purple. Sit here for a moment, Wonhyo suggests, and simply be aware of being aware. You settle into the suggested posture, feeling the wooden floor beneath you and the gentle morning breeze on your face. At first, your mind wants to analyze this instruction, to figure out what being aware of being aware means. But gradually, you begin to sense something underneath all your thoughts and feelings, a spacious presence that is simply witnessing everything without being disturbed by any of it. It's like discovering that you've been living on the surface of an ocean, never knowing the vast depths that lie beneath. This awareness, Wonhyo says softly, is what you truly are. It's what the merchant truly is, what every person you've ever met truly is. Thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall, circumstances change constantly, but this aware presence remains unchanged. When you rest here, reaction becomes impossible because there's nothing to defend, nothing to protect, nothing that can be threatened. You sit in this recognition for several minutes, feeling a peace deeper than anything you've ever experienced. It's not the peace of having everything go your way, but the peace of knowing that who you really are cannot be touched by whatever way things go. From this place, you can imagine responding to any situation with clarity and compassion, free from the old patterns of reactivity that have caused so much suffering. A bell rings somewhere in the monastery, calling the monks to their next activity. You open your eyes to find Wonhyo, watching you with deep satisfaction. Now you've tasted what it means to not react, he says. Not because you've suppressed anything, but because you've remembered what cannot be disturbed. This is the foundation of all wisdom, all compassion, all skillful action in the world. As you prepare to continue your journey through the monastery, Wonhyo offers one final teaching. Remember that every person you meet is fighting the same battle, the battle between their reactive patterns and their deepest nature. When you can remain rooted in your own peace, you become a refuge for others to remember theirs. This is how wisdom spreads, not through preaching, but through being. You walk deeper into the monastery grounds, carrying this profound teaching in your heart. The morning sun climbs higher, promising a day full of opportunities to practice what you've learned. In a distant courtyard, you hear the sound of monks chanting their morning prayers, their voices blending into a harmony that seems to echo the very rhythm of existence itself. Each note reminds you that peace is not something you must achieve, but something you must remember, again and again, moment by moment, breath by breath. The chanting grows closer as you follow a stone pathway lined with ancient maple trees. Their leaves have turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson, and each gentle breeze sends a few floating down like nature's own meditation on impermanence. You catch one in your palm, a perfect maple leaf with intricate veins and delicate edges, and you're struck by how something so beautiful is already in the process of returning to the earth. This, you realize, is another teaching about not reacting. Everything in life is already in the process of changing, so holding on too tightly to any particular form is like trying to grasp the wind. As you enter a new courtyard, you discover the source of the chanting. A circle of young monks sits under an enormous oak tree, their voices rising and falling in waves of ancient syllables that seem to vibrate in your very bones. At the center of the circle sits an elderly nun with a serene face and eyes that sparkle with deep intelligence. This is Master Seongyong, known throughout the region for her teachings on the practice of like space, the art of remaining unmoved by whatever arises in consciousness. You settle quietly at the edge of the circle, not wanting to disturb this sacred practice. The chanting continues for several more minutes, each repetition seeming to deepen the sense of peace that emanates from the group. When the final note fades into silence, Master Seongyong opens her eyes and looks directly at you with a smile that seems to embrace your very soul. "Ah," she says in a voice like flowing honey, "Master Wonhyo has sent us another seeker of the unmoved mind. Welcome to our morning teaching." She gestures for you to come closer, and you find yourself moving toward the center of the circle as the young monks make space for you. "We were just exploring the question that lies at the heart of all spiritual practice," she continues. "How is it possible to remain peaceful in a world that seems designed to disturb our peace? How can we maintain our center when everything around us is spinning in chaos?" One of the young monks raises his hand tentatively. "Master Seongyong, I understand the teaching intellectually, but when someone criticizes my meditation posture or questions my commitment, I still feel that familiar surge of defensiveness. How can I move beyond just understanding to actually embodying this wisdom?" The master's eyes light up with compassion and recognition. "Ah, dear Hyongak, you've touched upon the very heart of the matter. There's a vast difference between knowing about non-reaction and actually living from that place of unshakable peace. Let me share with you an ancient story that illustrates this difference." She settles more deeply into her sitting position, and you can feel the attention of the entire circle focusing like sunlight through a magnifying glass. Long ago, in the mountains of Tibet, there lived a hermit named Polden, who had spent 30 years perfecting his meditation practice. He was convinced that he had achieved complete equanimity and could no longer be disturbed by any external circumstance. His cave was perfectly arranged, his daily routine was flawlessly structured, and his inner state was as calm as a windless lake. You can almost see this hermit in your mind's eye, sitting in perfect posture, surrounded by the pristine silence of high mountains, completely satisfied with his spiritual accomplishments. One day, Master Seongyong continues, a wild yak wandered into Polden's carefully organized cave. This massive, shaggy beast knocked over his meditation cushion, scattered his few possessions, and began eating the barley he had carefully rationed for the winter. In that moment, Polden discovered that 30 years of meditation had not prepared him for this simple, unexpected disruption. The monks around you lean forward, recognizing something of themselves in this story. Polden exploded into a rage that surprised even himself. He shouted at the yak, threw stones, and eventually chased the poor animal out of his cave with a stick. As he stood panting in his destroyed sanctuary, he realized with shocking clarity that all his years of practice had been nothing more than spiritual self-indulgence. He had been meditating in perfect conditions, never testing his equanimity against real life. Master Seongyong pauses, allowing this realization to sink into your own awareness. You think about your own moments of spiritual confidence, times when you felt centered and wise, only to have that peace shattered by the smallest unexpected challenge. What happened next is the real teaching, she continues. Instead of falling into despair or returning to his old practice, Palden made a radical decision. He would go down into the valley, into the marketplace, into the messiness of human life, and practice his equanimity there. The image shifts in your mind from the pristine mountain cave to the chaotic bustle of a Tibetan marketplace. For the first time in decades, Palden found himself surrounded by noise, crowds, merchants haggling, children crying, the overwhelming sensory assault of ordinary human existence. And for the first time in decades, he began to practice meditation for real. Not the comfortable, controlled meditation of his cave, but the raw, honest practice of maintaining awareness in the midst of complete chaos. One of the younger monks looks confused. But Master, isn't it better to practice in peaceful conditions? How can we develop concentration when we're constantly being disturbed? Master Seongyong's smile deepens with infinite patience. This is exactly the misunderstanding that trapped Palden for 30 years. We think that meditation is about achieving a particular state of mind, a calm, peaceful, undisturbed state. But true meditation, the kind that actually transforms our lives, is about maintaining awareness regardless of what state of mind is present. She picks up a small bell that sits beside her and rings it once. The clear tone cuts through the air and gradually fades into silence. The sound of this bell is like a disturbing thought or emotion. We can try to prevent the bell from ringing, or we can practice being the space in which the bell's sound appears and disappears. The space is never disturbed by the sound. It simply allows the sound to be what it is. This metaphor opens something in your understanding, like a door you didn't even know was closed. So the practice, you find yourself saying, is not to prevent disturbances, but to become spacious enough to hold them without being moved. Precisely, Master Seongyong nods with delight. You are beginning to understand the difference between the meditation of avoidance and the meditation of acceptance. Palden learned this the hard way. In the marketplace, he couldn't control what arose in his consciousness. The sounds, smells, thoughts, emotions, all came and went according to their own nature. His practice became learning to rest in the awareness that was observing all these phenomena without being identified with any of them. The afternoon sun has moved across the sky during this teaching, and the quality of light in the courtyard has shifted from the bright clarity of morning to the golden warmth of late day. You notice this change without any resistance, simply observing how everything in nature demonstrates the teaching of impermanence. Even this beautiful moment, this profound sharing of wisdom, is already passing away, and there's something deeply peaceful about accepting that flow rather than trying to hold on to any particular experience. There's another part to Paulden's story. Master Seongyong continues, her voice taking on an even deeper quality of intimacy. After several years of practicing in the marketplace, he was walking through the bazaar one day when a merchant began loudly berating a young assistant for dropping a valuable vase. The merchant's face was red with anger. His words were harsh and humiliating, and the young man was clearly on the verge of tears. Paulden watched this scene with complete equanimity. No reaction, no judgment, just pure observation. You can picture this scene clearly, and you're struck by how similar it is to the encounter between the merchant and Master Wonhyo that you witnessed earlier. But then, the master continues, something unexpected happened. As Paulden watched this display of unconscious reactivity, he felt a wave of deep compassion arise in his heart, not pity or superiority, but genuine love for both the angry merchant and the frightened assistant. He realized that both of them were trapped in patterns of suffering, and he felt called to respond. "What did he do?" asks the young monk who had spoken earlier, his eyes wide with interest. He approached the merchant with the same presence he had cultivated in meditation. Master Seongyong explains, not reactive, not avoiding, just completely present and open. "Sir," he said gently, "I couldn't help but notice that you seem very upset. Accidents happen to all of us, and this young man appears genuinely sorry for his mistake. Perhaps there's a way to handle this situation that honors both your loss and his learning." The image of this interaction fills your mind with a sense of possibility. The merchant stopped mid-rant, completely disarmed by Paulden's unexpected kindness. For a moment, the entire marketplace seemed to pause, as if everyone sensed that something different was happening. Someone was responding from a place of wisdom, rather than reacting from a place of woundedness. The merchant's shoulders dropped, his angry mask fell away, and for the first time, he really looked at the young assistant he had been berating. What he saw was not carelessness or incompetence, but a terrified young man who was already suffering enough from his mistake. Master Seongyong pauses, allowing the power of this image to settle in your awareness. Around you, the other monks sit in complete stillness, absorbing not just the words but the transmission of wisdom that comes through the story. The merchant apologized to his assistant and even helped him clean up the broken pottery. But more importantly, he learned something that day about the difference between reacting from his wounded pride and responding from his basic human decency. Paulden had given him a gift that was far more valuable than any vase, the gift of remembering his own goodness. You feel a deep stirring in your chest as you contemplate this teaching. The realization begins to dawn that non-reaction is not about becoming cold or indifferent, but about becoming so spacious and present that you can respond to each situation with exactly what it needs. Master, you find yourself asking, how do we develop this kind of spacious awareness in our daily lives? Most of us don't have the luxury of spending years in mountain caves or even in marketplaces dedicated to practice. Master Seongyong's eyes twinkle with understanding. Every moment of ordinary life is a perfect opportunity to practice this awareness, she says. When you're washing dishes, instead of thinking about what comes next, can you be completely present with the warm water, the soap bubbles, the sensation of cleaning? When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of immediately reacting with anger, Can you take one conscious breath and feel the space around your reaction before you choose how to respond? She stands up gracefully and walks to a small fountain in the corner of the courtyard, gesturing for the group to follow. The water flows continuously from a bamboo spout into a stone basin, creating a gentle, rhythmic sound that immediately draws your attention into the present moment. This fountain demonstrates the practice perfectly, she explains. The water flows constantly, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes clear, sometimes carrying leaves or debris. But the basin remains unmoved, simply receiving whatever comes and allowing it to flow through. You watch the water flowing and suddenly understand the metaphor viscerally rather than just intellectually. We are the basin, you say with sudden clarity. Our thoughts, emotions, and experiences are the water flowing through us. The practice is to remain stable and unmoved, while allowing everything to flow naturally. Beautiful, Master Seong-yong exclaims with genuine delight. You're beginning to embody the teaching, not just understand it. This is exactly what Polden discovered in the marketplace, that he could be the stable, aware presence in which all experiences arise and pass away. Anger could flow through him without becoming him. Joy could flow through him without making him attached. Fear could flow through him without overwhelming him. One of the monks reaches into the fountain and cups some water in his hands. As he opens his fingers, the water flows through them back into the basin. It's impossible to hold on to the water, he observes. The harder you try to grasp it, the faster it slips away. And yet, Master Seong-yong adds with a knowing smile, when you stop trying to hold on to it, you can enjoy its coolness, its clarity, its life-giving properties. This is the paradox of non-attachment. When we stop clinging to our experiences, we can actually enjoy them more fully. The afternoon light is beginning to fade, and the first stars are becoming visible in the deepening sky. The monastery bells ring softly in the distance, calling the community to evening meditation. As the circle of monks begins to disperse, Master Seong-yong approaches you with a small, smooth river stone. Take this with you, she says, placing it gently in your palm. Whenever you feel yourself beginning to react, hold this stone and remember that you are as unmovable as a mountain, as spacious as the sky, as fluid as water. You contain all experiences without being defined by any of them. The stone feels warm from her touch and perfectly weighted in your hand. You close your fingers around it and immediately feel a sense of grounding, as if you're connected to something ancient and unshakable. Thank you, Master Seong-yong, you say, bowing deeply. This teaching about becoming space for our experiences, rather than trying to control them, it feels like a key to a door I've been trying to open my whole life. She places her hands together in a gesture of gratitude and recognition. The door was never locked, she says softly. It was only waiting for you to stop pushing and realize it opens inward. Every moment of non-reaction is a step through that door into the freedom of your true nature. As you walk away from the fountain, the sound of evening chanting begins to rise from the main meditation hall. The voices blend together in harmonies that seem to capture the very essence of what you've been learning, individual notes, maintaining their unique qualities while contributing to a greater whole. You realize that this is another metaphor for the practice. You can maintain your individuality, your personality, your unique way of being in the world, while simultaneously resting in the vast awareness that connects all beings. You follow a moonlit path toward the meditation hall, drawn by the hypnotic beauty of the chanting. Other students and visitors are making their way along the same path, each person wrapped in their own contemplative silence. The monastery grounds have taken on a magical quality in the evening light. Shadows dance between ancient trees. Lanterns cast golden pools of warmth along the walkways, and the entire atmosphere seems to pulse with the accumulated meditation of centuries. As you approach the hall, you notice a figure sitting alone on a bench beside the entrance. It's an elderly man in simple robes, his face weathered by decades of experience, but radiant with an inner peace that seems to illuminate the space around him. Something about his presence draws you, and you find yourself sitting quietly beside him without invitation. He doesn't acknowledge your presence immediately, but you sense that he's completely aware of your arrival. After several minutes of shared silence, he speaks without turning toward you. "The chanting is beautiful tonight," he says in a voice like aged whiskey, smooth, warm, with depths that hint at rich experience. "But do you know what I find even more beautiful? The silence between the notes, the space that allows the music to exist." You listen more carefully to the chanting and begin to notice what he means. Between each syllable, each phrase, each breath, there's a pregnant silence that somehow contains the entire song. That silence, the old man continues, is like the awareness we've been discussing today. It's not the absence of experience, it's the presence that makes all experience possible. You turn to look at him more directly and realize this must be Master Jigwan, the eldest teacher in the monastery, known for his profound insights into the nature of consciousness itself. His eyes hold depths that seem to have witnessed the rise and fall of countless phenomena without being touched by any of them. "Master Jigwan?" you ask tentatively. He smiles and nods, finally turning to meet your gaze. "Word travels fast in a monastery," he chuckles. "I hear you've been receiving some powerful teachings today about the art of not reacting. I wonder if you'd like to hear about the deepest level of this practice, the level where non-reaction becomes not a technique, but a spontaneous expression of your true nature." Your heart quickens with anticipation. Something in his presence suggests that you're about to receive a teaching that could fundamentally shift your understanding. "I would be honored," you reply, settling more comfortably on the bench. Master Jigwan gazes up at the star-filled sky, and you follow his gaze to see the infinite expanse of space, punctuated by countless points of light. "Tell me," he says, "when you look at the night sky, what do you see?" "Stars," you answer, then pause, sensing this is too simple. "And space. The darkness between the stars." "Good," he nods approvingly. "Now tell me, which is more important, the stars or the space?" You consider this question carefully, realizing it's pointing towards something profound. Well, without the space, the stars couldn't exist. The space allows the stars to shine and gives them their meaning. So I suppose the space is more fundamental. Exactly, Master Jigwan says with quiet satisfaction. And yet most people only notice the stars. They focus on the objects, the phenomena, the things that appear and disappear, and they miss the vast openness that makes it all possible. This is the same mistake we make with our inner lives. He turns back to face you, and in his eyes you see the same infinite spaciousness he's pointing to in the sky. We become fascinated with our thoughts, emotions, reactions, and experiences, the stars of consciousness, and we forget the awareness in which they all appear. But when you truly recognize yourself as that aware space, rather than as the temporary phenomena arising within it, non-reaction becomes as natural as the sky not being disturbed by clouds. This teaching hits you with such force that you feel momentarily dizzy. It's as if he's pointing to something you've always known, but never noticed, like suddenly becoming aware of the air you breathe. You're saying that we are the space of consciousness, not the contents of consciousness. I'm not saying it, he replies with a gentle smile. You're recognizing it. Right now, as we sit here talking, you're aware of my words, aware of the chanting, aware of the feeling of the bench beneath you, aware of thoughts and emotions arising and passing away. What is that which is aware? Can you find it? Can you point to it? Can it be disturbed by anything it's aware of? You close your eyes and turn your attention inward, looking for the awareness he's describing. At first, you only notice thoughts about awareness, concepts and ideas. But then something shifts, and you begin to sense the witnessing presence that's observing even those thoughts. It's like stepping back from a movie screen and realizing you're not the characters in the movie, but the space in which the entire film is playing. I can't find it as an object, you say with growing wonder. It's more like, I am it. It's not something I have, it's what I am. Master Jigwan claps his hands together once, a sound that cuts through the night air like a bell of recognition. Yes. And can this awareness be angry? Can it be sad? Can it be reactive? Or does it simply allow all these experiences to arise and pass away within its infinite spaciousness? The profundity of this recognition washes over you like a wave of peace. You realize that all your life, you've been identifying with the temporary waves on the surface of the ocean, never noticing that you are the ocean itself. This awareness, it's already free, isn't it? It's already peaceful, already unmoved by whatever appears within it. Now you're beginning to understand why the great masters don't practice non-reaction, Master Jigwan says with deep satisfaction. They simply rest in their true nature, which is naturally non-reactive. When you know yourself as infinite space, how can any finite experience disturb you? When you recognize yourself as the unchanging witness, how can any changing phenomenon shake your peace? The chanting from the meditation hall reaches a crescendo and then gradually fades into silence. In that silence, you feel the truth of his words, not as concepts, but as direct experience. You are the silence in which the chanting arose and into which it dissolved. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear. You are the spacious presence that remains unaffected by any temporary experience. This is the ultimate teaching, Master Jigwon whispers, his voice barely audible but somehow penetrating to your very core. Not to become non-reactive, but to recognize that your deepest nature is already pure awareness, untouchable, unshakable, eternally free. Every practice, every technique, every method is just pointing you back to this simple recognition of what you have always been. You sit together in profound silence as this understanding integrates into your being. The monastery grounds around you seem to shimmer with new meaning. Every stone, every tree, every shadow becomes a reminder of the aware presence that perceives it all. The difference between yourself and the world begins to dissolve as you recognize that the same awareness, looking out through your eyes, is the same awareness expressing itself as everything you see. Finally, Master Jigwon stands and places a gentle hand on your shoulder. The night is deep, and tomorrow will bring new opportunities to live from this understanding, he says. Remember that every moment of forgetting is just another chance to remember. Every reaction is an invitation to return to the space that cannot be moved. And every breath is a doorway back to the awareness that you are. As he walks slowly toward the meditation hall, his figure gradually disappearing into the shadows, you remain on the bench in a state of profound stillness. The night air carries the scent of incense and jasmine, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls across the valley. Each sensation arises in the vast space of your awareness and dissolves back into that same space, leaving no trace, causing no disturbance. You understand now that this entire day, from the angry merchant to the peaceful garden, from the flowing fountain to the starlit sky, has been one continuous teaching about the nature of consciousness itself. Each story, each encounter, each moment of recognition has been pointing you toward the same truth. You are not a small reactive self trying to defend itself against a threatening world. You are the infinite awareness in which all worlds appear and disappear, the eternal witness that cannot be touched by anything it witnesses. The monastery bells chime midnight, their deep tones rolling across the valley like waves of peace. You rise from the bench and begin walking slowly back toward your guest quarters, but your steps feel different now, lighter, more fluid, as if you're floating just above the ground. Every footfall seems to arise spontaneously from this vast stillness, rather than from personal effort or intention. As you pass the garden where you first encountered Master Wonyo, you pause to look at the patterns he created in the sand. Even in the moonlight, you can see that the lines are still there, though slightly blurred by the evening breeze. Tomorrow, you realize, he will rake them fresh again, not because the old patterns were wrong or inadequate, but because each moment offers the opportunity for new expression, new creativity, new responsiveness to whatever life brings. This, you understand, is what it means to live from the place of non-reaction, not to become rigid or unchanging, but to remain so fluid and spacious that you can respond freshly to each moment without carrying the burden of past reactions or the anxiety of future ones. Like the garden patterns, each response arises spontaneously from present moment awareness and dissolves back into that awareness when its purpose is complete. You reach your quarters and pause at the threshold, looking back across the moonlit monastery grounds. Everything is exactly as it was this morning when you first arrived, yet everything has been transformed by the shift in your perception. The buildings are the same, the paths are the same, the trees and stones remain unchanged, but you are seeing them now from the place of awareness itself, rather than from the limited perspective of a separate self trying to navigate a foreign world. As you prepare for sleep, you carry with you the teachings of this extraordinary day. The angry merchant has shown you that every reaction is an old wound seeking healing. Master Wonyo has demonstrated that response emerges naturally from presence. Master Sungyong has revealed that we are the space in which all experiences arise. And Master Jigwon has pointed you to the ultimate truth, that what you are seeking, you already are. Sleep comes easily, naturally, like a gentle dissolving back into the source from which all experience emerges. Your dreams are spacious and peaceful, filled with images of flowing water, vast skies, and gardens that rake themselves in perfect patterns that are never quite the same, yet always expressing the same underlying harmony. Even in sleep, you remain aware of the awareness that dreams all dreams and wakes from all awakenings, the constant presence that is your true face before you were born and after you return to the mystery from which you came. You wake before dawn to the sound of distant temple bells, but this awakening feels different from any you've experienced before. Instead of the usual grogginess or disorientation, you find yourself emerging from sleep like a lotus flower opening to the first light of day, naturally, effortlessly, with complete presence. The awareness that was witnessing your dreams is the same awareness now perceiving the soft grey light filtering through your window, and you realize that consciousness never actually sleeps, only changes the content of its experience. You dress quietly and step outside into the pre-dawn stillness. The monastery grounds are wrapped in a silvery mist that makes everything appear dreamlike and ethereal. Your footsteps on the stone pathway seem to arise from the silence itself, each sound emerging and dissolving back into the vast quietude that holds all sound. As you walk, you notice that your body moves with a new quality of ease, as if it's being carried by the same awareness that moves the clouds across the sky and draws the sap up through the trees. You find yourself drawn toward a part of the monastery you haven't yet explored, a narrow path that winds up the hillside behind the main buildings. Ancient stone steps, worn smooth by countless feet over countless years, lead you higher into the mountains, where the mist grows thicker and the silence deeper. Each step feels like a meditation, each breath like a prayer, each moment like a doorway, opening into ever greater expanses of peace. At the top of the path, you discover a small hermitage nestled among towering pine trees. Smoke rises from its chimney, and warm light glows through paper windows, suggesting that someone is already awake and present in this remote sanctuary. As you approach, you hear the soft sound of someone working quietly inside, the gentle tap, tap, tap of a hammer against wood, rhythmic and meditative. The door opens before you can knock, and you find yourself face to face with a woman whose age is impossible to determine. Her hair is white as mountain snow. Her face is lined with the maps of long experience, yet her eyes hold the bright clarity of a child seeing the world for the first time. She wears simple grey robes and moves with the fluid grace of someone completely at home in her own body. This is Master Myoan, the monastery's most revered teacher, known for her mastery of what the tradition calls effortless action, the art of responding to life without the interference of personal will. "Ah," she says, with a smile that seems to illuminate the entire hermitage, the student who has been learning about non-reaction. "I felt your presence approaching and thought you might appreciate seeing how these teachings translate into the art of living." She steps aside and gestures for you to enter her simple dwelling. The interior is sparse but perfectly arranged. A few meditation cushions, a small altar with a single candle, shelves lined with hand-carved wooden bowls and simple tools. At a small workbench near the window, you see what she's been crafting, an exquisite wooden flute, its surface smooth as silk, and carved with delicate patterns that seem to flow like water frozen in mid-motion. "I've been working on this for 3 months, she explains, running her fingers lovingly along the instrument's length. But working isn't quite the right word. It's more like listening to what the wood wants to become and helping it find its way there." She picks up the flute and runs her thumb along a section that's still being shaped. "When I first began learning woodcraft many years ago, I approached it the way most people approach any skill, with effort, force, determination to impose my will on the material. I would grip my tools tightly, push hard, fight against the grain of the wood. The results were functional but lifeless, and the work left me exhausted and frustrated." Master Myoan sets the flute down gently and picks up one of her carving tools, a small curved knife that fits her hand perfectly. Then one day, after years of struggle, something shifted. I was working on a particularly difficult piece of cherry wood, feeling increasingly frustrated by my inability to achieve the shape I wanted. In a moment of exhaustion, I simply stopped trying. I set down my tools, placed my hands on the wood, and asked it what it wanted to become. She pauses, her eyes growing distant as she recalls this pivotal moment. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about action and effort. I felt the wood's natural grain, its hidden stresses and strengths, the way it wanted to split and curve. When I picked up my knife again, my hands moved differently, not forcing the wood to conform to my ideas, but following the pathways the wood itself was showing me. You watch as she demonstrates this principle, her hands moving over the flute with incredible delicacy and precision. Each tiny cut seems to emerge from deep listening rather than predetermined intention. "This," she says softly, "is what we mean by Wu Wei, action that arises from non-action, effort that emerges from effortlessness. It's the same principle you've been learning about non-reaction, but applied to the realm of creative expression." She offers you the tool, and you accept it with slightly trembling hands. Try making a small cut on this practice piece, she suggests, indicating a block of soft pine wood. But before you begin, close your eyes and feel the wood. Let your hands discover its texture, its density, the direction of its grain. Don't think about what you want to create. Just listen to what wants to be created. You follow her instructions, closing your eyes and running your fingers over the wood's surface. At first, your mind wants to analyze and plan, but gradually you begin to sense something deeper, a kind of intelligence in the material itself, a natural tendency towards certain forms and away from others. When you finally make your first cut, you're surprised by how smoothly the knife moves, as if it's following a path that was already there, waiting to be revealed. Beautiful, Master Myoan says, with genuine appreciation. You're beginning to understand that the highest skill is not about mastering techniques or overpowering materials. It's about becoming so sensitive, so present, so aligned with the natural flow of things that your actions arise spontaneously from wisdom rather than from personal will. She moves to her small stove where a kettle is beginning to sing, and you notice how even this simple action carries the same quality of effortless precision. Her movements are economical yet graceful, purposeful yet relaxed. This same principle applies to every aspect of human life, she continues as she prepares tea. Relationships, work, creative expression, even the way we respond to difficult emotions, everything flows more smoothly when we stop trying to force outcomes and start listening to the deeper intelligence that moves through all situations. The tea she serves is unlike any you've ever tasted, simultaneously delicate and robust, with layers of flavor that seem to unfold on your tongue like a flower opening in slow motion. I grow and blend these herbs myself, she explains. But again, it's not really about following recipes or techniques. Each season, each batch of leaves teaches me something new about balance and harmony. The tea creates itself. I just provide the conditions for its natural perfection to emerge. As you sip the extraordinary tea, you feel a deep settling in your nervous system, as if your entire being is synchronizing with some fundamental rhythm of existence. Master Myoan, you ask, how does this principle of effortless action relate to the challenges of daily life? It's one thing to carve wood or blend tea with this kind of presence, but what about dealing with difficult people, financial stress, health problems, situations where we feel we need to fight or struggle to survive? Her eyes sparkle with understanding, and she sets down her teacup with the same mindful precision she brings to everything. Let me tell you about a time when this teaching was tested in the most challenging way possible, she says. 7 years ago, I received news that would have devastated my old way of being. My younger brother, who lived in the valley below, had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctors gave him 3 months to live. The weight of this revelation settles into the small hermitage, like a heavy stone dropping into still water. My first impulse was pure reaction, panic, despair, the desperate need to do something, anything, to fix the situation. I wanted to research every possible treatment, drag him to specialists, spend my life savings on experimental therapies. The thought of losing him activated every survival instinct I possessed. She pauses, gazing out the window at the mist-covered valley below where her brother had lived. But then I remembered everything I had learned about Wu Wei, about listening deeply before acting. Instead of immediately jumping into frantic activity, I sat in meditation for 3 days. I held the news of his illness in the spacious awareness we've been discussing, neither pushing it away nor being overwhelmed by it. I asked the same question I ask of the wood: what wants to emerge from this situation? You lean forward, deeply moved by her vulnerability and wisdom. What did you discover? I discovered that my brother didn't need me to save him, she says with profound gentleness. He needed me to love him completely, to be fully present with him, to help him face his death with the same grace he had tried to bring to his life. When I visited him with this understanding, instead of with panic and false hope, everything changed. We spent his final months in the most intimate, honest, beautiful communion we had ever shared. Tears begin to flow down your cheeks as you feel the depth of love and wisdom in her words. Instead of fighting against the reality of his illness, we worked together to help him die well, she continues. We talked about everything we had never spoken of: our childhood fears, our deepest dreams, our gratitude for having been siblings in this mysterious journey of life. We laughed together, cried together, and sat in silence together. His death became not a tragedy to be prevented, but a sacred passage to be honored. The morning light has grown stronger as she's been speaking, and the mist outside is beginning to lift, revealing glimpses of the valley below. He lived for 8 months instead of 3, Master Myoan says with a gentle smile. But more importantly, those 8 months were filled with a quality of presence and love that transformed both of us. When he finally passed, it was peacefully, surrounded by family, with no regrets or unfinished business between us. She stands and walks to the window, looking out at the emerging landscape with eyes that seem to hold both great sadness and great joy. This experience taught me that Wu Wei doesn't mean being passive or accepting everything without question. It means responding from such deep listening, such profound presence, that our actions align perfectly with what each situation truly needs. Sometimes what's needed is fierce protection, sometimes gentle acceptance, sometimes radical honesty, sometimes patient silence. You feel a fundamental shift occurring in your understanding, as if a puzzle piece you didn't know was missing has suddenly clicked into place. So effortless action isn't about not making effort, you say slowly, working through this insight. It's about making the right effort at the right time, in the right way, based on deep attunement to what's actually happening, rather than on our fears or desires about what should be happening. Precisely, she nods with evident satisfaction. The effort becomes effortless because it's aligned with the natural flow of things, rather than fighting against it. Like a skilled sailor who doesn't fight the wind, but uses it skillfully to reach any destination. The wind does the work, but the sailor's knowledge and presence make purposeful movement possible. She returns to her workbench and picks up the flute again, running her fingers along its nearly completed surface. This instrument will be finished when it's finished, she says. I can feel that it's nearly ready to sing, but forcing the final steps would ruin months of patient work. Everything in its own time, according to its own nature, guided by awareness that's learned to trust the intelligence inherent in all processes. The morning sun has now completely burned away the mist, revealing a breathtaking view of the valley below. Terraced fields create geometric patterns on the hillsides. A river winds silver through the landscape, and in the distance, you can see the rooftops of villages where people are beginning their daily activities. From this elevated perspective, human life appears as part of a vast, interconnected web of natural processes, farmers working with the rhythms of seasons, water following the contours of land, communities arising and changing according to needs and circumstances. This view always reminds me of the bigger picture, Master Mayawan says, following your gaze. From up here, you can see how everything is part of one seamless whole. The same intelligence that moves the river along its banks, that tells the trees when to bloom and when to shed their leaves, that coordinates the migration of birds across vast distances. This same intelligence moves through human life when we stop interfering with our small-minded ideas about how things should be. She begins to clean her carving tools with the same meditative attention she brings to everything else. The ultimate teaching of Wu Wei is that we are not separate from this natural intelligence, she continues. We are expressions of it. When we align ourselves with its flow, our actions become as effortless and appropriate as a bird's flight or a flower's blooming. We stop experiencing life as a struggle between ourselves and the world and start experiencing it as a dance between different aspects of one unified consciousness. As she speaks, you notice that a small bird has landed on the windowsill. It's a mountain finch with bright yellow markings, and it seems completely unafraid of your presence. Master Mayawan moves slowly toward the shelf where she keeps a small dish of seeds, and the bird watches her with alert but trusting eyes. She places a few seeds on the windowsill, and the finch immediately begins eating, occasionally looking up at both of you as if acknowledging your kindness. "See how naturally this interaction unfolds," she whispers. "The bird trusts because my movements carry no aggression or neediness. I offer the seeds because doing so feels like a natural expression of caring, not because I want something in return. Neither of us is forcing anything, yet perfect communication and cooperation arise spontaneously." The bird finishes eating and flies away with a brief, musical trill that seems like a song of gratitude. Human relationships can have this same quality when we approach them from Wu Wei, Master Mayawan explains. Instead of trying to manipulate outcomes or control other people's responses, we can learn to offer ourselves authentically and trust that whatever unfolds will be exactly what's needed for everyone's growth. You spend the next hour in quiet companionship, sometimes talking, sometimes working together on small tasks around the hermitage, sometimes simply sitting in the profound peace that seems to emanate from Master Mayawan's very being. Everything she does, sweeping the floor, tending a small garden, arranging flowers, becomes a teaching about presence and effortless action. You begin to understand that this isn't a special technique she applies to certain activities, but rather a way of being that infuses every moment with grace and intelligence. As the sun reaches its zenith, she walks you to the door of the hermitage. Before you return to the monastery, she says, I want to give you one final practice to take with you. For the next week, before taking any significant action, pause and ask yourself, what wants to happen here? Not what do I want to happen, not what should happen, but what wants to emerge from this situation if I get my personal agenda out of the way. She presses into your hands a small piece of the wood you were carving earlier, its surface smooth from your tentative cuts. Let this remind you that you are both the artist and the medium, she says with a final, radiant smile. You have the capacity to shape your life, but you are also being shaped by forces far greater and wiser than your individual will. The secret is learning to cooperate so completely with these forces that your personal will and the universal will become indistinguishable. As you walk back down the mountain path, the piece of wood feels warm in your pocket, and Master Myoan's words echo in your heart like a bell struck at the perfect moment. The monastery buildings come into view below, and you realize that you're seeing them with new eyes, not as a place you're visiting, but as another expression of the same consciousness that carved the flute, grew the tea, and guided your footsteps to exactly where you needed to be. Every stone in the pathway, every leaf on the trees, every breath you take seems to be arising from the same source of effortless intelligence that Master Myoan has learned to trust so completely. The afternoon light has a golden quality that makes everything appear luminous and alive. As you enter the monastery gates, you notice that your body moves differently now, less driven by personal will, more responsive to the subtle currents of energy and attention that flow through each moment. You're beginning to embody the teachings you've received, not as concepts to remember, but as living wisdom that expresses itself naturally through your presence and actions. In the main courtyard, you encounter a group of young students engaged in their afternoon work practice. Some are sweeping paths, others are tending gardens, and a few are carrying water from the well to various buildings. What strikes you most is how each person seems completely absorbed in their task, bringing the same quality of meditative attention to mundane work that they would bring to formal sitting meditation. You realize this is another expression of Wu Wei, turning every activity into an opportunity for presence and service. One of the students, a young woman with a bright, open face, approaches you with a warm smile. "Welcome back from the mountain," she says. Master Myoan's teachings have a way of settling into your bones, don't they? Would you like to join us in evening meditation? We're gathering in the main hall as the sun sets. You nod gratefully, feeling drawn to continue this day of profound learning in the company of others who are walking the same path. As you follow her toward the meditation hall, you notice that your anticipation feels different from usual, less grasping, more open, like a flower waiting to receive whatever light the evening might bring. The day's teachings have begun to integrate at levels deeper than thought, creating a foundation of trust and presence that supports whatever arises without needing to control or manipulate the experience. The meditation hall is already filled with the soft golden light of late afternoon when you arrive. Dozens of practitioners sit in rows of perfect stillness, their bodies upright yet relaxed, their faces serene and inwardly focused. You find a cushion near the back and settle into the familiar posture, but immediately notice that something has changed in the quality of your sitting. Instead of efforting to maintain good posture or struggling to quiet your mind, you find yourself naturally supported by the same awareness that has been carrying you through this entire journey. As the formal meditation period begins with the sound of a bell, you close your eyes and surrender into the vast spaciousness that you now recognize as your true nature. Thoughts arise and dissolve, like clouds passing through an infinite sky. Emotions flow through you like weather patterns moving across the landscape of consciousness. Physical sensations come and go like waves on the shore of awareness. But through it all, you remain as the unchanging witness, the unmoving center, the space in which all experience appears and disappears without leaving a trace. The bell rings again, signaling the end of the meditation period, and you open your eyes to find that the hall has filled with the soft purple light of dusk. The day's teachings about non-reaction, about spacious awareness, about effortless action, have woven themselves into a seamless understanding that feels less like knowledge acquired and more like remembrance of something you've always known. As you bow with the other practitioners and prepare to leave the hall, you carry with you not just new concepts, but a transformed way of being in the world. The evening meal is served in a large dining hall, where the entire community gathers in silence to share simple, nourishing food. You notice how even eating becomes a meditation when approached with full presence. The texture of rice, the flavor of vegetables, the warmth of tea, all become gateways into deeper appreciation for the interconnected web of life that brings food to your table. Between bites, you practice the spacious awareness that allows you to be fully present with the meal while remaining open to whatever thoughts or feelings might arise. After dinner, as the community disperses for evening study and personal practice, you find yourself walking alone through the monastery gardens. The first stars are beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and lanterns cast pools of warm light along the pathways. Everything feels sacred and ordinary at the same time. The crunch of gravel under your feet, the gentle sound of wind in the bamboo, the distant murmur of evening prayers from the various halls and hermitages scattered throughout the grounds. You pause beside the fountain where Master Seong-yong taught you about being space for all experiences, and you're struck by how different you feel now from the person who arrived this morning. Not different in any dramatic or obvious way, but different in the most fundamental way possible. You know yourself now as awareness itself rather than as the thoughts, emotions, and experiences that arise within awareness. This shift is so subtle yet so complete that it feels like waking up from a dream you didn't even know you were having. The water continues its eternal flow from the bamboo spout into the stone basin, and you realize that this fountain has become a perfect metaphor for your new understanding of life. Experience flows through the space of consciousness like water flowing through the basin, sometimes turbulent, sometimes calm, always changing, never staining or altering the container that holds it all. You are the basin, eternally stable and unmoved, allowing life to flow through you without resistance or attachment. As you prepare to return to your quarters for the night, you feel a deep gratitude for all the teachers and teachings that have guided you through this transformative day. Master Wonhyo's demonstration of responding rather than reacting, Master Seongyong's teaching about being space for all experience, Master Jigwon's pointing to your true nature as pure awareness, and Master Myoen's embodiment of effortless action, each has contributed to a understanding that feels both revolutionary and completely natural. Tomorrow, you will carry these insights back into your ordinary life, but you know now that no life is truly ordinary when lived from the place of awakened awareness. The sound of pre-dawn chanting drifts through your window like a gentle invitation back to consciousness. As you emerge from deep, dreamless sleep, you notice that the transition from unconsciousness to awareness feels seamless, like stepping from one room into another within the same vast house. The monastery bells begin their morning song, each tone rippling through the mountain air and settling into your bones with a vibration that seems to attune your entire being to the rhythm of awakening. You dress in the dim light and step outside into a world transformed by overnight rain. Every surface glistens with dewdrops that catch the first rays of sunlight, like countless tiny mirrors reflecting the infinite. The air smells of wet earth and pine needles, and your breath forms small clouds that dissipate into the crisp morning atmosphere. As you walk the familiar paths, you notice how the rain has washed everything clean, revealing colors more vivid than you remembered. The deep green of moss, the rich brown of weathered wood, the silver sheen of wet stone. Your footsteps lead you naturally toward the meditation garden, where you first encountered Master Wonhyo, but today you discover a different scene unfolding. A small group has gathered around an elderly monk who sits perfectly still beside the rock garden, his weathered hands resting in his lap, his eyes closed in deep contemplation. This is Master Hyagong, renowned throughout the region for his mastery of what the tradition calls the patient mind, the ability to remain utterly peaceful in the face of any provocation or challenge. As you approach quietly, you overhear a young monk speaking with obvious frustration. Master Hyagong, I've been practicing meditation for 3 years, and I still find myself getting angry at the smallest things. Yesterday, when another student accidentally knocked over my tea during the meal, I felt such rage rise up in me that I had to leave the dining hall. How is it possible to develop the kind of patience you demonstrate? Sometimes I wonder if I'm even capable of genuine spiritual progress. Master Hyagong opens his eyes slowly, like a flower opening to receive the morning light. His gaze holds such profound kindness that you can feel it from where you sit at the edge of the group. "Dear Mujin," he says, his voice carrying the gentle strength of mountains that have weathered countless storms, "your frustration with your own reactivity is itself a form of reactivity. You are fighting against your human nature instead of understanding it. Let me share with you a story that might illuminate a different approach." He settles more deeply into his posture, and you can sense the entire group leaning in to receive whatever wisdom he's about to share. "Many years ago, when I was about your age, I believed that patience meant suppressing my anger, pushing down my irritation, and presenting a calm facade no matter what was happening inside. I became quite skilled at this performance, and other students often praised me for my self-control. But I knew that beneath this peaceful exterior, storms of resentment and judgment continued to rage. A gentle breeze stirs the bamboo nearby, creating a soft rustling that seems to underscore his words. One day, my teacher sent me to spend a month with an old hermit who lived alone in a cave high up in these same mountains. This hermit, Master Byopjong, was famous for his patience, but when I arrived at his cave, I was shocked by what I found. He was sitting outside his dwelling, apparently having an animated argument with a large crow that had taken up residence in a nearby tree. Several of the listening monks smile at this unexpected image, and you find yourself drawn deeper into the story. The crow had been stealing food from the hermit's small garden for weeks, and Master Byopjong was scolding the bird as if it were a misbehaving child. "You greedy fellow," he was saying, shaking his finger at the crow. "I've told you a dozen times that those berries are for both of us to share. Your behavior is completely unacceptable." Master Haegong pauses, allowing the humor and confusion of this scene to register with his listeners. I was deeply disturbed by witnessing this apparently impatient behavior from a master I had come to revere. When the crow finally flew away, I approached Master Byopjong and asked him directly, "How can you call yourself a patient person when you argue with birds?" His response changed my entire understanding of what patience actually means. The morning sun has climbed higher now, warming the garden and creating intricate patterns of light and shadow through the overhanging branches. Master Byopjong laughed heartily at my question. Haegong continues, and then he asked me, "Young monk, did you see me trying to hurt the crow? Did I throw stones at it or set traps to catch it? Did I storm around in a rage or spend days plotting revenge? Or did I simply express my honest feelings, set a clear boundary, and then let the whole incident pass?" You feel something shift in your understanding as these words penetrate deeper than just intellectual comprehension. I realized in that moment that I had been confusing patience with emotional suppression. Master Haegong explains, "True patience isn't about never feeling anger or irritation. It's about feeling these emotions fully without being controlled by them. It's about responding authentically to situations while maintaining awareness of the deeper peace that cannot be disturbed by any temporary emotional weather." The young monk who had initially posed the question looks confused but intrigued. "But Master, if we express our anger, won't that just create more conflict and disharmony?" "This is where the subtlety lies," Haegong responds with infinite gentleness. "There's a vast difference between expressing emotion from reactivity and expressing emotion from awareness. When Master Byopjong scolded the crow, he wasn't lost in his irritation. He was using it skillfully as a form of communication. His underlying state remained peaceful and loving, even while his surface emotions provided information about boundaries and mutual respect. To demonstrate this principle, Master Haegong stands and walks to a flowering bush nearby. He examines the branches carefully and then firmly but gently moves aside a stem that's growing in a direction that would eventually damage the plant's overall structure. "This is what the gardener's patience looks like," he explains. "Not passive acceptance of everything, but wise intervention guided by love for the whole. Sometimes patience means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means expressing difficult truths. Sometimes it means taking firm action, all arising from the same underlying spaciousness. As he speaks, the crow from his story suddenly appears, landing boldly on the edge of the fountain just a few feet away from the group. Everyone turns to look at this unexpected visitor, and Master Haigong's face breaks into a delighted smile. "Ah, my old friend," he says to the bird with genuine warmth. "Still listening in on my teachings, I see. Have you come to add your wisdom to our discussion?" The crow tilts its head, regarding the master with what appears to be intelligent curiosity, then lets out a single, clear caw before flying away. The entire group laughs, and you feel how this spontaneous moment has somehow deepened the teaching in a way that words alone could never achieve. "You see," Master Haigong says, settling back into his seat, "patience includes humor, playfulness, and the ability to find joy even in our challenges. When we take our spiritual practice too seriously, we miss the natural lightness that emerges from understanding our true nature." Over the next hour, you watch as Master Haigong works with each student's individual questions about developing patience. With remarkable skill, he tailors his responses to meet each person exactly where they are in their understanding. To one student struggling with impatience in meditation, he suggests focusing less on achieving particular states and more on befriending whatever arises. To another dealing with family conflicts, he offers practices for maintaining inner equilibrium while engaging authentically with difficult relatives. Throughout these interactions, you're struck by how Master Haigong embodies the very qualities he's teaching. His responses emerge without hurry or forcing, each word seeming to arise naturally from deep listening and genuine care. When students interrupt each other or ask questions that seem to miss the point, his patience never wavers, not because he's suppressing irritation, but because his awareness remains spacious enough to hold all expressions of human confusion and seeking with equal compassion. As the group begins to disperse for morning work practice, Master Haigong approaches you with a knowing smile. "I sense that you've been receiving profound teachings during your stay here," he says. "But there's one more aspect of patience I'd like to share with you, perhaps the most important one for someone who will soon be returning to the complexities of ordinary life." He leads you to a quiet corner of the garden where an ancient ginkgo tree stands in magnificent solitude. Its fan-shaped leaves shimmer gold in the morning light, and its massive trunk speaks of centuries of patient growth. "This tree," he says, placing his hand gently on its bark, "is one of my greatest teachers. It has weathered countless storms, droughts, floods, and human disturbances, yet it continues to grow steadily toward the light. Do you know what its secret is?" You look up into the vast canopy above, feeling dwarfed by the tree's ancient presence. "Its deep roots, you guess?" "Partly," Master Haigong nods, "but there's something even more fundamental. This tree has never been in a hurry. It grows at exactly the pace that serves its highest health and development, neither rushing towards some imagined future, nor dwelling in past seasons. Each ring of growth represents 1 year of patient presence, 1 year of trusting the process of becoming without forcing outcomes. He sits down beneath the tree's spreading branches and invites you to join him. This is the deepest teaching about patience, he continues, his voice taking on an almost reverent quality. It's not just about remaining calm in difficult moments. It's about trusting the timing of your own unfolding. So many people exhaust themselves trying to force their spiritual development, demanding immediate enlightenment, becoming frustrated when growth doesn't happen according to their schedules. You feel these words touching something tender in your own experience. How many times have you become impatient with your own progress, comparing yourself to others, pushing for breakthroughs instead of allowing natural development? The tree doesn't judge itself for not blooming in winter or lose faith when storms strip away its leaves, Master Haigong observes. It simply continues its patient work of being exactly what it is in each moment, trusting that this is enough for whatever wants to emerge. A period of profound silence settles between you, filled only by the gentle sounds of wind in the leaves and distant temple activities. In this quietude, you feel yourself naturally synchronizing with the tree's patient rhythm, your breathing slowing, your nervous system settling into a deeper state of rest. This is what I want you to remember most, Master Haigong says softly, when you return to your daily life and face its inevitable challenges. You are like this tree, growing steadily toward your fullest expression, weathering whatever storms arise, trusting in the perfect timing of your own becoming. As if summoned by some invisible signal, a small group of children appears at the garden's entrance. They're from the village school that occasionally visits the monastery for cultural education, and their bright faces and animated chatter bring an entirely different energy to the peaceful space. You watch with interest as Master Haigong's demeanor shifts to accommodate these young visitors, not fundamentally changing, but adapting, like water taking the shape of its container. "Master Haigong," one of the children calls out, running toward him with obvious delight. "Will you tell us the story about the impatient farmer? Please?" The other children gather around eagerly, their enthusiasm infectious and pure. You realize you're about to witness another facet of his teaching skill, the ability to convey profound wisdom through simple stories that speak to minds and hearts of any age. "Of course, little ones," he says, his voice taking on the special warmth adults, reserved for children. "But first, let's all sit comfortably under our friend the ginkgo tree." Trees are excellent listeners, and this one has heard many stories over its long life. Once everyone is settled, Master Haigong begins. Long, long ago, there lived a farmer who was so impatient that he could barely sleep at night after planting his rice seeds. Every morning, he would rush to his fields and stare at the muddy ground, willing the little green shoots to appear. "Why aren't they growing faster?" he would ask his wife. "My neighbor's rice was planted the same day, and I'm sure his plants will be bigger than mine." The children listen with rapt attention, and you find yourself equally drawn into the tale. Day after day, the impatient farmer became more and more worried. When the first tiny green shoots finally appeared, he was so excited that he decided to help them grow faster. "These poor little plants," he said to himself, "they're struggling so hard to push through the soil. I'll give them a helping hand." Master Hyagong pauses dramatically, and one of the children asks with concern, "What did he do?" "Well," the master continues with a gentle smile, "the impatient farmer went to his field early the next morning and began carefully pulling on each little rice shoot, trying to make them taller. He worked all day, stretching every single plant in his entire field. By evening, he was exhausted but satisfied. 'Look how much my rice has grown in just one day,' he told his wife proudly. 'I'm surely the best farmer in the village.'" The children's eyes grow wide as they anticipate what must have happened next. But when the farmer woke up the next morning and went to admire his fast-growing rice, Master Hyagong's voice drops to a whisper. Every single plant in his field had died. By trying to force them to grow faster than their natural pace, he had destroyed their delicate roots and killed his entire crop. A collective gasp rises from the children, and you feel the power of this simple story hitting something deep in your own understanding. The farmer learned a very important lesson that day. Master Hyagong continues, "Some things cannot be rushed. Plants grow at their own pace, friendships develop in their own time, and learning happens when we're truly ready. The most beautiful things in life unfold naturally when we give them the gift of our patience." One of the older children raises her hand thoughtfully. "Master Hyagong, does this mean we should never try to improve or work hard?" "What a wonderful question," he responds with genuine delight. The farmer's mistake wasn't in caring for his rice or wanting it to grow well. His mistake was in not trusting the natural process and trying to force results through impatience. There's a big difference between nurturing growth and forcing it. When you study for school, practice music, or learn to ride a bicycle, you're nurturing your own growth. But if you become frustrated and impatient, trying to skip steps or demanding instant mastery, you might actually slow down your progress. As the children absorb this wisdom, you reflect on how perfectly this story captures what you've been learning throughout your stay at the monastery. Every teaching has pointed toward the same fundamental truth. When we stop fighting against the natural flow of life and learn to work with it skillfully, everything becomes easier and more effective. Not easier in the sense of requiring no effort, but easier in the sense of moving with the current instead of against it. The children eventually disperse to explore other parts of the monastery, their laughter and excited voices gradually fading as they move toward the main buildings. Master Hyagong watches them go with evident fondness, then turns back to you with a smile that seems to hold all the warmth and wisdom of countless seasons. "Children are natural teachers of patience," he observes. "They remind us that growth is meant to be joyful, that learning can be playful, and that the present moment is the only place where real development actually happens." The morning sun has grown quite warm by now, and you notice that the dew on the grass has evaporated, leaving everything fresh and bright. "Master," you find yourself asking, "as I prepare to leave this place and return to my ordinary life, how can I maintain the patience and presence I've discovered here? I'm concerned that the pressures and distractions of daily life will quickly erode these insights." His eyes soften with understanding, and you sense that this is a question he's answered many times for many students. "The most important thing to remember," he says, rising and beginning to walk slowly toward the monastery's main courtyard, "is that patience is not a destination you reach, but but a muscle you strengthen. Every moment offers an opportunity to practice, waiting in line at the store, dealing with traffic, listening to someone whose opinions differ from yours, even tolerating your own imperfections and mistakes. As you walk together, you pass other students and teachers going about their daily activities. Each person you encounter nods respectfully to Master Haigong, and you notice how his mere presence seems to create ripples of calm and centeredness in everyone around him. The secret, he continues, is to start small and be consistent. Don't try to become perfectly patient overnight. Remember the story of the impatient farmer. Instead, choose one small situation each day where you can practice responding rather than reacting, where you can offer the gift of your presence rather than the urgency of your agenda. You arrive at the central courtyard where the fountain continues its eternal flow, and Master Haigong pauses beside the stone basin. This fountain has been flowing for over 300 years, he tells you. Countless students have sat beside it, struggling with the same questions you're wrestling with now. Countless masters have offered the same fundamental teachings about patience, presence, and trust in the natural unfolding of wisdom. You are part of an ancient lineage of seekers, and that lineage will support you even when you feel alone or confused. He reaches into his robes and pulls out a small, smooth stone, similar to the one Master Seongyong gave you, but this one has been worn into an almost perfect sphere by centuries of handling. This has been passed down through our community for generations, he explains, placing it gently in your palm. Each teacher has carried it during their own period of deepest doubt and struggle. When you hold it, remember that patience is not about perfect composure, but about returning again and again to presence, no matter how many times you lose your way. The stone feels incredibly smooth and warm, as if it holds the accumulated serenity of all the hands that have held it before yours. Thank you, Master Haigong, you say, deeply moved by the weight of tradition and trust represented by this simple gift. I will carry this reminder of patience and remember that my spiritual development, like the ginkgo tree's growth, unfolds in perfect timing when I stop forcing and start trusting. As you prepare to leave the courtyard, Master Haigong offers one final teaching. Remember that every person you encounter is also learning patience in their own way. The difficult people, the impatient people, the reactive people, they are all your teachers, offering you opportunities to practice the very qualities you most want to develop. When you can meet their impatience with your patience, their reactivity with your presence, their confusion with your clarity, you transform not only your own experience, but contribute to the healing of our shared world. The afternoon begins to unfold with a quality of timeless ease as you continue exploring the monastery grounds. You find yourself naturally gravitating toward a section you haven't yet visited, a terraced garden where elderly monks tend rows of vegetables with the same meditative attention they bring to formal spiritual practice. The sight of these ancient practitioners, some bent with age but still lovingly caring for plants that will feed the community, touches something deep in your heart. One of the oldest monks, his back curved from decades of bending over garden beds, looks up as you approach. His face is deeply lined, but radiates the kind of contentment that comes from a life lived in complete alignment with one's deepest values. "Ah," a visitor to our humble vegetable meditation, he says, with a voice like rustling leaves. Would you like to learn about the patience of the earth? She is the greatest teacher of all. Without waiting for your response, he hands you a small hand tool and gestures toward a bed of young lettuce plants. Weeding, he explains simply, is like tending the mind. You gently remove what doesn't serve the growth of what you're cultivating. But you must be careful not to disturb the delicate roots of what you want to keep. As you kneel beside him and begin carefully separating weeds from vegetables, you're struck by how this simple activity becomes a profound meditation. Each movement requires attention and discernment, distinguishing between what serves the garden's health and what competes with it. Your hands work in the cool soil while your mind settles into the rhythm of careful, purposeful action. You see, the old monk continues as he works beside you. The earth teaches us that patience is not passive, waiting, but active, loving care. She provides nutrients, holds the seeds in darkness until they're ready to sprout, weathers storms that might damage tender plants. Her patience is fierce and protective, not weak or indifferent. This is the kind of patience we can cultivate toward our own growth and the growth of others. The afternoon sun warms your back as you work, and you lose track of time in the meditative rhythm of gardening. Other monks work nearby in companionable silence, and you feel held by a sense of community and shared purpose that transcends the need for constant conversation. This, you realize, is another form of the teaching, learning to be present with others without the compulsion to fill every moment with words or activity. As the light begins to shift toward evening, the old monk stands slowly and surveys the work you've accomplished together. Good, he says with simple satisfaction. The plants can breathe a little easier now. Tomorrow they'll be a little stronger, a little more able to reach toward the light. This is how all growth happens, not in dramatic leaps, but in countless small acts of care and attention. He brushes the soil from his hands and looks at you with eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of countless seasons. When you return to your life beyond these walls, he says, remember the lettuce. Every day, you can tend the garden of your own consciousness with the same patient care, gently removing thoughts that don't serve your highest growth, nurturing the qualities you want to cultivate, trusting that small, consistent efforts create lasting transformation. As you walk back toward the main monastery buildings, your hands still carrying the scent of earth and your heart full of the day's accumulated wisdom, you feel a deep sense of completion beginning to settle in. Tomorrow, you will begin your journey back to ordinary life. But you know now that you carry within you a treasure more valuable than any external accomplishment, the understanding that true peace and wisdom arise not from controlling external circumstances, but from cultivating inner spaciousness and patience. Every challenge that awaits you in the world beyond these walls is simply another opportunity to practice these timeless teachings, another chance to embody the profound simplicity of responding rather than reacting. The final morning of your stay arrives with a silence so profound it seems to hold the accumulated wisdom of your entire journey. You wake naturally before dawn, without the aid of bells or external signals, as if your internal rhythm has finally synchronized with the deeper pulse of the monastery itself. Through your window, you can see the first hints of light beginning to touch the mountain peaks, painting them in subtle shades of rose and gold that seem to whisper of new beginnings. As you prepare for this last day, you find yourself moving with a quality of presence that has become second nature over your time here. Each simple action, washing your face, folding your bedding, arranging your few possessions, feels infused with the same meditative attention you've learned to bring to formal practice. You realize that the monastery has taught you something far more valuable than techniques or concepts. It has shown you how to transform any activity into a gateway to deeper awareness. Stepping outside into the pre-dawn stillness, you're drawn once more to the garden where your journey began. The familiar paths feel different under your feet now, not because they've changed, but because you've learned to walk them with complete presence. The stone patterns Master Wonyo created have been raked fresh once again, their lines flowing across the gravel, like written prayers in an ancient language that speaks directly to the heart. To your surprise, you find Master Wonyo himself, sitting beside the garden, not working on the patterns, but simply being present with the emerging day. His posture embodies everything you've learned about non-reactive awareness, completely alert, yet utterly relaxed, engaged with his surroundings yet unmoved by any particular phenomenon. When he notices your approach, his greeting is wordless but complete, a simple nod that acknowledges the profound transformation he's witnessed in your presence over these few days. The final teaching, he says softly as you settle beside him, is always about return. How do we carry the insights of retreat back into the world of action and relationship? How do we maintain the spaciousness we've discovered here when faced with deadlines, conflicts, and the countless small irritations that make up ordinary life? You watch as the sky continues to lighten, revealing the intricate details of the world that were hidden in darkness. I've been wondering about that myself, you admit. These teachings feel so clear and natural here, surrounded by such peace and wisdom. But I know that as soon as I encounter traffic jams, difficult people, work pressures, or family conflicts, I'll be tempted to fall back into old patterns of reactivity. Master Wonyo nods with deep understanding, his eyes reflecting the growing light of dawn. This concern itself reveals wisdom, he observes. The fact that you're aware of the challenge means you're already halfway to meeting it skillfully. But let me share something that might surprise you. The monastery is not actually a peaceful place. This statement catches you completely off guard. What do you mean? You ask, looking around at the serene gardens, the harmonious buildings, the atmosphere of profound tranquility that has surrounded you for days. The monastery is full of human beings, he explains with a gentle smile, which means it's full of the same challenges you'll face in any human community. Personality conflicts, disagreements about how things should be done, occasional selfishness, moments of doubt and confusion. The difference is not that these challenges don't exist here, but that we've learned to meet them from a place of awareness rather than reactivity. We've created a culture where the default response to difficulty is presence rather than defensiveness. As if summoned to illustrate his point, the sound of raised voices drifts across the courtyard from one of the kitchen buildings. You can't make out the words, but the tone suggests some kind of disagreement or frustration. Rather than ignoring this disruption to the monastery's peaceful atmosphere, Master Wonhyo gestures toward the sound. Shall we go see how our teaching applies to real-time human conflict? You follow him toward the kitchen, where you discover two young monks engaged in what appears to be a heated discussion about food preparation. One insists that the rice has been overcooked and needs to be started fresh, while the other argues that it's perfectly acceptable and starting over would waste precious resources. Their voices are tense, their body language defensive, and you can see how their different opinions have triggered deeper issues around competence, authority, and personal pride. What happens next demonstrates the profound difference between a community trained in awareness and one operating from pure reactivity. Instead of intervening directly or taking sides, Master Wonhyo simply enters the kitchen and begins quietly examining the disputed rice. His presence immediately changes the energy in the room, not through any dramatic action, but through the simple power of non-reactive awareness meeting reactive energy. "Brothers," he says gently, his voice cutting through the tension like warm butter, "I can see that you both care deeply about serving our community well. This disagreement isn't really about rice, is it? It's about each of you wanting to do your best work and feeling frustrated when your standards seem to conflict with someone else's." The two monks pause, their defensive postures beginning to soften as they recognize the truth in his observation. "Brother Haegwan," Master Wonhyo continues, addressing the monk who wanted to start over, "your attention to detail and high standards are gifts to our community. And Brother Miran," he turns to the other, "your concern for not wasting resources and your practical wisdom are equally valuable. How might we honor both of these qualities in finding a solution?" You watch in fascination as the entire dynamic shifts from conflict to collaboration. The monks begin talking to each other instead of at each other, acknowledging the validity of both perspectives and brainstorming ways to address the current situation that honor both excellence and practicality. Within minutes, they've agreed on a solution that neither had initially considered, using the slightly overcooked rice for a different dish where the texture would actually be an advantage. As the three of you leave the kitchen, Master Wonhyo turns to you with a knowing smile. "You see, the monastery doesn't eliminate human challenges. It provides a laboratory for learning to meet them with wisdom. Those same skills that just transformed a conflict into creative collaboration can be applied anywhere human beings interact with each other." You spend the morning walking through different areas of the monastery, and with your new understanding, you begin to notice subtle signs of the ordinary human dramas that Master Wonhyo described. A student struggling with self-doubt about their meditation practice, two teachers having a respectful but firm disagreement about scheduling, an elderly monk dealing with physical pain that makes him occasionally impatient with slower-moving students. What strikes you most is not the absence of these challenges, but the way they're met with such consistent presence and skill. "The secret," Master Wonhyo explains, as you pause beside the fountain where you learned about being space for all experience, "is that we've made consciousness itself our primary practice. Not consciousness as an escape from life's difficulties, but consciousness as the most effective way to engage with them. When awareness becomes your default mode, every challenge becomes an opportunity to deepen that awareness rather than a threat to your peace. As the afternoon approaches, you're invited to join a special ceremony that marks the transition between your time as a monastery guest and your return to ordinary life. The entire community gathers in the main meditation hall, creating a circle that includes not only the permanent residents, but also the other visitors and students who have been sharing this sacred space. At the center of the circle sits a simple altar holding a single candle, its flame steady and unwavering despite the gentle air currents in the room. Master Jigwon, the eldest teacher who first pointed you toward your true nature as pure awareness, rises to address the group. Today, we honor the timeless truth that every arrival contains within it the seeds of departure, and every departure carries the essence of what has been received. Our friend here has spent these days remembering what they have always known, but perhaps temporarily forgotten, that peace is their true nature, wisdom is their birthright, and love is their deepest response to existence itself. One by one, each of the teachers you've encountered offers a brief reflection on some aspect of the teachings you've received. Master Seong Yong speaks about becoming space for all experience. Master Myoan shares insights about effortless action. Master Hirgong reminds you of patience as a form of trust in natural timing. As they speak, you feel the various strands of wisdom you've received, weaving together into a seamless understanding that transcends any individual teaching. But the most important voice in this circle, Master Jigwon concludes, is your own. Would you share with us what you're taking from this experience? Not just the concepts you've learned, but the lived understanding that will guide you as you re-enter the world beyond these walls. For a moment, you sit in the profound silence of the circle, feeling the weight of the question and the loving attention of the entire community. When you finally speak, the words seem to emerge from a depth you didn't know you possessed. I'm taking with me the understanding that I am not the small, reactive self I thought I was. You begin. I am the awareness in which all experience arises and passes away. This awareness cannot be disturbed by anything it witnesses, and from this place, I can respond to any situation with wisdom and compassion, rather than react from old wounds and fears. You pause, feeling into the truth of these words as they settle in your heart. I've learned that non-reaction doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent, but rather becoming so spacious and present that my responses arise from clarity rather than confusion. Every difficult person I encounter is offering me a chance to practice this presence. Every challenging situation is an opportunity to remember who I really am. And every moment of forgetting is simply another doorway back to remembering. The circle receives your words with profound silence, and you feel how your understanding has become part of the collective wisdom that this community holds and transmits. Master Wonhyo approaches with a small, leather-bound journal that has been aged by many hands. This contains reflections from students who have sat where you're sitting now, he explains. Some wrote poems, others drew pictures, some simply recorded a single word or phrase that captured their deepest insight. Would you add your voice to this lineage of seekers? You accept the journal with hands that tremble slightly from the honor of this request. As you flip through its pages, you see decades of heartfelt expressions from people whose lives were touched by these same teachings. Some entries are sophisticated philosophical reflections. Others are simple drawings or single words like home, peace, or remembering. When you find a blank page, you sit quietly for several minutes, allowing whatever wants to emerge to arise naturally. Finally, you write, "I came seeking to learn how not to react, and I discovered that what I am cannot be moved by any reaction." The waves thought they needed to become calm, but they discovered they were always the ocean. Below this, you draw a simple circle, empty yet complete, boundless yet perfectly whole. As the ceremony concludes with a period of silent meditation, you feel the profound integration of everything you've learned settling into your bones. The silence is not empty but full, pregnant with the accumulated wisdom of centuries of practitioners who have walked this same path of awakening. When the final bell rings, marking the end of your formal time as a monastery student, you feel ready to carry this treasure back into the world. The evening meal is especially festive, with the entire community gathering to celebrate not just your departure, but the continuity of the teachings that will flow through you into whatever life situations you encounter. Conversations flow naturally between profound spiritual insights and light-hearted humor, demonstrating how the deepest wisdom often expresses itself through the most ordinary human connections. You realize that this integration of sacred and mundane is perhaps the most important teaching of all, that awakened awareness doesn't separate us from life, but allows us to engage with it more fully and skillfully. As the evening progresses, you find yourself in small group conversations with other visitors who are also preparing to leave. Each person has received the teachings through their own unique lens of experience and understanding, yet beneath the surface differences, you recognize the same fundamental transformation that has occurred in your own awareness. You're struck by how the monastery serves as a kind of laboratory where people from all walks of life can discover their shared essence beneath the surface differences of personality, culture, and personal history. One visitor, a business executive from Tokyo, shares how the teachings about non-reaction have already begun transforming her approach to corporate conflicts. Another, a retired teacher from California, describes how the understanding of spacious awareness has helped him navigate the challenges of aging and physical limitation with greater grace. A young artist from Berlin explains how the principles of effortless action have revolutionized her creative process, allowing her work to emerge from a place of flow rather than forced effort. Listening to these diverse applications of the same fundamental insights, you begin to appreciate the universal nature of what you've learned. These are not exotic philosophical concepts, relevant only to monastic life, but practical wisdom, principles that can transform any human situation when applied with sincerity and consistency. The monastery has served as a protected environment where you could discover and practice these principles, but their real test and value will come through their application in the complexity of ordinary life. As the night deepens and the community begins to disperse for personal study and rest, Master Wonhyo approaches you for a final private conversation. "Tomorrow you begin the journey home," he says, settling beside you on a bench overlooking the moonlit valley. But I want you to understand that home is not a place you're traveling toward. It's the awareness you're traveling as. Every step of your journey, every person you encounter, every challenge you face will be arising within the same spacious consciousness you've learned to recognize here. The moonlight illuminates the entire valley spread below, and you can see the lights of distant villages twinkling like stars that have fallen to earth. Each of those lights represents human beings who are struggling with the same fundamental questions you brought here. Master Wonhyo continues. How to find peace in the midst of chaos, how to respond wisely rather than react blindly, how to maintain connection with their deepest nature while navigating the demands of practical life. You are returning to them not as someone who has escaped these challenges, but as someone who has learned to meet them from a fundamentally different place. He stands and walks to the edge of the overlook, his silhouette framed against the star-filled sky. The monastery will always be here when you need to remember these teachings, he says. But more importantly, the monastery you've discovered within your own awareness will travel with you wherever you go. Every moment of presence is a return to this sacred space. Every breath taken in awareness is a coming home to your true nature. As you prepare for sleep on this final night, you're surprised to find that instead of sadness about leaving, you feel profound gratitude and excitement about the opportunity to test and share what you've learned. The monastery has given you something far more valuable than a temporary escape from life's challenges. It has given you the tools and understanding to transform those challenges into opportunities for deeper awakening. Every difficult person will become a teacher of patience. Every stressful situation will become a chance to practice presence. Every moment of conflict will become an invitation to respond from awareness rather than react from conditioning. Your dreams that night are filled with images of integration, bridges spanning great distances, rivers flowing from mountain sources to vast oceans, seeds carrying the DNA of ancient trees into new soil. Even in sleep, you're processing the profound transformation that has occurred, allowing the deepest levels of your being to align with the wisdom you've received. When you wake for the final time in your monastery guest quarters, it's with a sense of completeness that includes both gratitude for what has been received and readiness for what lies ahead. The morning of departure arrives with a quality of light that seems to bless your transition back into the world. You pack your few belongings with the same meditative attention you've learned to bring to every activity, folding each item with presence and care. The stones and small gifts you've received from various teachers feel like tangible reminders of intangible wisdom, physical anchors that will help you remember these insights when the intensity of ordinary life threatens to sweep them away. Your final walk through the monastery grounds becomes a kind of walking meditation, each familiar path and building offering its own teaching about impermanence and gratitude. The garden where you first encountered Master Wonhyo's demonstration of non-reaction, the fountain where you learned about spacious awareness, the hermitage where you discovered effortless action, the ginkgo tree that taught you about patient timing. Each location holds layers of meaning that will continue to unfold long after you've physically left this place. The entire community gathers at the monastery gates to offer their farewell blessings, creating a circle of presence that honors both your journey and their own commitment to the path of awakening. No one offers advice about how to maintain your practice or warnings about the challenges you'll face. Instead, they simply embody the qualities they've spent years cultivating: presence, compassion, wisdom, humor, and the unshakable knowing that what you've discovered here can never truly be lost because it was never truly absent. Master Wonhyo approaches for the final teaching, but instead of words, he simply places his hands together and bows deeply, honoring the Buddha nature that has awakened more fully through your time here. In that bow, you feel the transmission of the entire lineage of awakened beings who have discovered and shared these same timeless truths. When you bow in return, it's not just a gesture of respect, but a recognition of the same awakened essence that connects all beings, regardless of their apparent differences. As you walk through the monastery gates for the final time, you carry with you not just memories of a transformative experience, but a fundamentally altered understanding of who you are and how life works. The path ahead winds down the mountain toward the valley, where ordinary life continues its eternal dance of challenges and opportunities. But you walk that path now as someone who knows that there is no such thing as ordinary life, only life met with ordinary consciousness, or life met with awakened awareness. The monastery bells ring one final time as you reach the first bend in the path, their tones following you like a benediction into the wider world. But you know now that you carry within you a bell that can ring at any moment, calling you back to presence, back to awareness, back to the unshakable peace that is your true nature. Every person you'll meet, every situation you'll encounter, every breath you'll take is an opportunity to live from this understanding, to demonstrate through your own being that it's possible to remain unmoved by the storms of life while still engaging fully with its endless creativity. The final teaching of the monastery reveals itself not in words, but in the simple recognition that there is no final teaching, only an endless deepening into the mystery of awareness discovering itself through countless forms and circumstances. You are not leaving the monastery behind, but carrying its essence forward, becoming a living bridge between the wisdom of ages and the needs of this moment. In every act of non-reaction, every response born from presence, every moment of spacious awareness, you become part of an ancient current of awakening that flows through all traditions and touches all hearts, ready to receive its transformative power. As the monastery disappears from view behind the mountain curves, you feel not loss but expansion, the boundaries between sacred and mundane, between monastery and world, between teacher and student dissolving into the recognition that all of life is one continuous teaching when met with the awareness you've learned to cultivate. The power of not reacting is not something you've acquired, but something you've remembered, not something you must maintain, but something that maintains itself when you simply rest in your true nature. And with each step toward home, you carry that recognition deeper into a world that desperately needs the gifts of presence, wisdom, and unshakable peace that flow naturally from the awakened heart. As our journey through these ancient teachings draws to a close, let the profound words of the Buddha himself illuminate the path you now carry forward. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. In every moment of your daily life, remember that the unshakable peace you discovered in that mountain monastery was never dependent on external circumstances. It was always your true nature, waiting to be recognized. The Buddha taught us, you will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger. Each time you feel the familiar surge of reactivity rising within you, remember the merchant in the garden. Remember Master Wonhyo's steady hands. Remember that you are the space in which all emotions arise and pass away. Your reactions cannot touch the vast awareness that you truly are. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. When faced with difficult people and challenging situations, become the presence that transforms conflict into understanding, reactivity into wisdom, suffering into compassion. You are not here to fight the storms of life, but to be the calm center around which they can safely rage and eventually settle. The Buddha's final words to his disciples were simply, "Work out your salvation with diligence." But remember, this work is not about becoming something you are not, but about removing everything that obscures what you have always been. Each moment of non-reaction, each breath taken in awareness, each response, born from presence rather than pattern, is your contribution to the awakening of our world. Take with you this timeless reminder: the mind is everything, what you think you become. You are not the small, reactive self you once believed yourself to be. You are boundless awareness itself, temporarily playing the role of a human being, here to discover that peace, wisdom, and love are not achievements to be earned, but your natural inheritance to be claimed. From all of us here at Moonmine Temple, may you walk in peace, respond with wisdom, and remember always the power that lies not in reacting to life, but in being the awareness within which all of life unfolds. Until we meet again in the space of shared understanding, carry these teachings gently in your heart. The monastery bells fade into silence, but the wisdom they represent echoes eternal.